We're looking at the Chronological Bible, and we're in event number 45 out of 56 or 55, I've forgotten which now, in the Galilean ministry of Jesus, approximately AD 29. It's found in Matthew 16, verses 5 through 12, and Mark chapter 8, verses 14 through 25. And it's quite an interesting one because we have the spiritual and we have the worldly. So let me tell you this story. A number of years ago, we had a pastor in Lake Park, Florida, and he was having a very well-known speaker, probably one that never would have come to our little church, except that he knew Gene Henson, our pastor at the time. He was world-renowned. He had written books. He was well sought after, and he was coming, and he was going to do a couple of day revival for us. And I came to church, and someone's headlights were on. It was going to be an evening service. Somebody's headlights were on, and the service was getting ready to begin because I'd been to work and was coming in kind of late, and the service had already begun. And I wanted to be sure that the person that headlights were on were not going to wind up with a dead battery. And this is long before the headlights had turned off automatically after a time, so I knew that they weren't going to turn off and that they would probably come out an hour and a half later and find a dead battery. So I wrote out a very careful note that someone's headlights were on and the description of the car, make and model. And I was looking for appropriate time to try to get one of the ushers or somebody to bring the note up to our pastor so that they could announce that someone's headlights were on. Well, there wasn't a very convenient time, and finally I found a way of getting the note to the pastor, but by that time our guest speaker was speaking. And I saw that the note got to our pastor all right, and I saw that he looked down and read it, but then he put it in his pocket, and 15, 20 minutes later he had not announced the headlights were on. 20 minutes later, he hadn't announced it. 30 minutes later, 45 minutes later, and he didn't announce it. And even after the service, when the speaker was finished and invitation had been given, he didn't announce it. And then very, 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 very late, just some of the people had even started to go home. He said, and oh, by the way, such and such a car has their headlights on. And I thought, gee, that was terrible that he didn't do that. But what he had done is he had decided that this speaker's message was far more important spiritually than the physical dead battery. Now think about that for a minute. Rather than to interrupt this well-known speaker and get everybody's thoughts moving off of the spiritual things to the worldly things, he had elected not to interrupt the service. And all I was worried about was the guy's headlights being on and going to have a dead battery. Well, that's very much what's going on here. We have Jesus going across the Sea of Galilee again, and he's at Magdala, which is about midway down on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. And his disciples had forgotten to take bread. Now, understand in the order of what things are happening, he has just finished feeding the 4,000. And remember, there were lots of leftovers from that. And the disciples are talking amongst themselves about the fact that they hadn't brought any bread. And Jesus says to them, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod. Now, that fact that Herod was included in the leaven of is out of Mark rather than out of the Matthew passage. And they're all concerned because they haven't brought any bread, and they're already in the boat. And Jesus actually rebukes them after he says, beware of the leaven, because they have so little faith. They've already seen him feed 5,000 with leftovers. They've already seen him feed 4,000 with leftovers. And yet they don't understand that the bread's a very insignificant item. Jesus can make bread anytime he wants to out of nothing, or he can take existing bread and take the one loaf that they had and make it into all that they needed. But they also missed totally the beware of the leaven. They just started thinking about leaven and bread and started realizing they were short on bread. And so he rebukes them. And it's really quite interesting, because we have the worldly, the bread, and we have the spiritual, which is the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod. The doubts and the signs that the Pharisees wanted were going to permeate their minds. The disciples were going to wind up, if they weren't careful, listening to the fact that Jesus would perform signs for them and miss out on the spiritual. And he even goes on so far as to say, he that has eyes but can't see, he that has ears but can't hear, you've hardened your hearts. You've allowed the worldly things to bother you more than the spiritual things to bother you. You're more concerned about bread than you are about the fact that the Pharisees and Herod can poison the whole loaf. The leaven can be the leaven in the thinking process and in the spiritual lives of the men. Kind of like my wanting to worry about headlights being left on instead of a speaker that we might never ever have a chance another time to hear. If we're not careful, we can worry about the grocery list, where we're going to eat dinner after church, whether or not the kids gave us a hard time going to church, or whether there's something else going on, and we miss totally the pastor's message. Yes, it's real easy to allow the world to distract us and to harden our hearts and to cause doubts to come into our minds when we can't explain creation, or we can't explain Jesus' miracles, or we can't explain the various fossil levels and why the earth is not a billion years old, and it creates doubts in our mind, and it leavens our thinking towards the world instead of towards spiritual things. We got to be careful. We got to be careful that we're spiritually tuned in. We got to be careful when we go into worship that we bow our heads for a moment and say, God, clear my mind from all the worldly troubles and allow me to focus in on the pastor's message this morning. And speak to me. Speak to my spiritual nature. And don't allow any doubts or fears or confusion of this world to keep me from communing with you. And that's my thought for the day. I hope that there's something around you today as we're watching this little video clip didn't keep you from hearing the message that I had for you. Don't let the world drown out the things that God has for you. And that's surely what we all need to do. God bless. Do you know how to get to heaven? It's clearly written out for us in the book of Romans. The book of Romans tells us that we're all sinners. We all fall short of the glory of God. We've all earned our wages. The wages of sin are death, and we've all earned our wages. But God loved us enough that he sent his Son to die for us. It tells us while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And it tells us that we'll confess with our mouth and believe in our hearts that God has raised him from the dead and that he is a perfect sacrifice for us. We will be saved. Now, being saved means turning away from sin and self and turning to Christ and Christ alone by faith for our salvation. Have you ever done that? Why don't you do it today? Watch this little clip about the 3 circles. It'll help you to understand God's perfect plan for your life. God bless you and have a great day.